Hi, everybody. I am here again on a Saturday because after we switched to Sunday by popular demand, then I ended up having to go to planes, trains, and automobiles, and then a funeral service for the next couple days. And so we tried to find a place on Sunday, but that's when we're going to be at a long funeral service, and I don't think I'll be able to do it tomorrow. So we're doing this today, and I hope it doesn't inconvenience everybody. Then we'll go back to Sunday, I promise. So, hello. We'll do the coming in part of the gathering room today. And hello, Adriana. And then somebody emailed a question, a fine question that I am going to enjoy answering. Hi, Karen Hanlon. Hi, Malvina. Hi, Linda and Rebecca. Paulina and Clarissa. It's like a song, all your names. It's so beautiful. And I love how everybody jumps on right at the beginning now. It's so much, it's getting more fun all the time, isn't it? Happy Saturday, Jenny. Yay. Pamela and Marcia and Sarah and Terry and Corey. Hi, Sal. How you doing? Marcia, Laura. So many people. Sedona, Oregon, Toronto. I always have to say the place names. Just so you can have this image that I have in my head of this gathering room. It's just one room, and then it goes out in all these little points of light all over the world. And then they all come together. So, Anastasia, hi. Ooh, a light rider, yay. Andrea, is that a goat or a squirrel? It's a squirrel. Andrea has a squirrel picture. Maybe Andrea is a squirrel. Heather Moscow, good to see you. Jenny, hi from the UK, where my youngest daughter now lives. Victoria, Jenny, Corey. Chicago. Okay, I think we're getting to the point. Susan and Jane and Marcia from Alberta, where Pocklington, I've never heard of Pocklington. Hi, Jane. So, peace from Texas. Let's get into today's topic because it is something I have been thinking about for 30 years, so buckle up. Somebody did ask, I'm not sure who it was. Do you know who asked the question? Anyway, someone asked about my very first book that ever came out through Times Books, Random House, which was called Breaking Point, Why Women Fall Apart and How They Can Recreate Their Lives. And it was actually me studying the fate of both women and men in a society that was changing really super rapidly. It was none other than my PhD dissertation. We used to have this thing when I was in graduate school. People would get together at parties and they'd say to someone, so what's your dissertation about? And the person would say, well, it's about the Korean waxworks, and everyone in the room would go, because they're always boring. PhD dissertations have to be boring. In fact, one of the pieces of feedback I got on my early drafts was, this is far too readable. This is not a literary degree. You're supposed to be writing sociology here. So I made it very non-literary for Harvard, and then I made it more literary for Random House. And it sold like probably in the 9s of copies, up in that range. But someone here read it and asked if it's still true. So here, let me tell you what it's about. There is something, traditional societies in all over the world have as their highest set of values, care for the group. So you give up your individuality basically in order to care for the group. The warriors hunt and fight for the group. The women care for the group. Less individualism. Then you get modern Western societies. And for the first time in history, a huge number of people got socialized to be obsessed with individual achievement at the expense of other people. So you got people trying to excel, not just do well, but do better than others. So instead of cooperation, society became about competition. And to some extent that had always been there. Everybody wanted to be the biggest hunter or have the most children or whatever. But in our school system, for example, everybody's ranked against everyone else. So the interesting thing is, traditional society is made the way it is because people need to be taken care of. The old, the young, the sick, the tired, they need care. They need the healthy, strapping people in the tribe to give them some attention. In modern society, the healthy, strapping people are supposed to be out there ahead of everyone else, achieving for themselves. And then you get people at the pinnacle of this pyramid who are really just out for selfish reasons. And that is rewarded and rewarded and rewarded. So what happened, like when I was doing my dissertation in the 80s, was that women in American society were caught between the actual needs of a human group, caretaking, and the push to abandon care for the group and just pursue individual ends. So if a woman was rising in her company, she was bad because she wasn't taking care of loved ones. But if she was taking care of loved ones, she was an idiot because she didn't have a career. And if she was trying to do both, she was absolutely torn in half. Let me tell you something. This is a little complex, but you can handle it. There was something called the Broverman study done in, I think, the 80s, 70s. And what it was they took a bunch of psychologists and psychiatrists and things, and they had them make a list of the characteristics of a good man, a good woman, and a good person, or a healthy man, a healthy woman, and a healthy person, right? Okay, so the lists for healthy man and healthy person were the same. And they were things like strong sense of self, pulls himself up by his bootstraps, does the hard things to get ahead, all that stuff. The list for a good woman was sacrifices self for the group, is always agreeable, cares for others first, blah, blah, blah. So you could be a healthy man and a healthy person at the same time. But if you were going to be a healthy person, you would be a bad woman. And if you were going to be a good woman, you would be a bad person or a unhealthy person. So women were caught in this complete paradox. And it was ripping women apart in the 80s, because that's when we were trying to have kids and careers, because they told us that it would be easy. Because all the people who had created careers told us that women's work could be done with your toes while you were asleep. One of the sociologists at Harvard told me, when I had my first child, children don't require any attention until they're 5 years old, and then you have to drive them to school. This was a famous sociologist, a man who supposedly understood all about human life. Because he only had to drive a 5-year-old to school, he literally didn't realize that human infants take full-time care that would fell a lumberjack. Like, take a Navy SEAL, give him a couple of newborn babies, like a mother with twins, he will be out of his mind, sick and crying within a day. I'm telling you, it's not easy. You know what I'm talking about. And then you put in elderly parents, whatever, you've got a total crisis on your hands. But that wasn't seen. Somebody came up to Jane, not Jane Fonda, that fabulous feminist. Who was the fabulous, glamorous feminist, you guys? She didn't write the feminist. Gloria Steinem. Somebody went up to her in the 80s at a dinner and said, look, I'm trying to have a career and children at the same time. And she said, why did you not tell us, and by you she meant feminists, why did you not tell us it would be so hard? And Gloria Steinem, whom I love and admire, just shook her head and said, we didn't know. Okay, so that's what I was looking at. And what was happening is women were being so fractured by the social contradiction that they were actually losing their minds. and the vast majority were struggling with something, but some had been pushed to a point that I called the breaking point, where their sense of self was so contradictory that it started to act on them like a koan in meditation. That they couldn't solve this problem from within their social selves because the society itself was fractured. And so they would experience a separation from culture. So they would suddenly stop caring what anyone thought of them. And at that point, and this was about 10% of the people I interviewed, they experienced things that were mystical. They were non-social. they were, and this is where I first started learning about shamans and things, because in traditional groups, it was people who had those psychic breaks, not psychotic breaks, psychic breaks, where they would lift off culture and then be connected to something from above, numinous, from another realm. And they would start to live their lives by heart from the inside out. So that started my whole thing of how to live your life. What I also saw 30 years ago was that women would get through this by becoming highly individualistic in a way that was tuned into their spirit selves, for want of a better word, rather than to society. But men would get crushed and crushed and crushed into more and more of the modern thing where you have to exceed and excel and blah, blah, blah. But they'd be pushed into so much individualism in their jobs and in their role definition that they would become isolated from the love and inclusion that makes people emotionally healthy, and that it would start to starve them of love. And this was actually something one of the first sociologists, the famous one, said, this is just going to happen. It's the iron cage. We're marching into a place that has no love, no warmth, no care, just competition. It's kind of Game of Thrones. So that's what was happening. I'm sorry, it took a long time, but it took 400 pages of a dissertation to track all that. So I think 11 minutes is not bad. Here's what's happened. Everybody on this call or on this broadcast in this gathering room is probably in that group of people who have separated to some point from all the social cues, because the society is nuts. It's internally contradictory. It's got paradoxical values, and you can't live by paradoxical values. It's like, never say anything true. You can't live that way. It splits you apart. So some of you might still feel split apart. Some of you might be approaching the breaking point. Some of you might be at the breaking point where you're like, I cannot be everything I wanted to be or that society wants me to be. And some of you have gone past the breaking point where you said, society is messed up. I'm going to live by heart. I'm going to find another source of instructions for what I do. So I'm writing the Integrity Cleanse right now. It's all about going with your nature rather than your culture. So I'm still writing about the same thing 30 years later. So anybody have questions or comments about that? I can tell you that if you do feel conflicted, go off by yourself and find out what you feel and believe in your heart, whether you're male or female. If you feel female and if you are female and you feel conflicted, find what's true in your heart. If you're male and you feel captive, find what's true in your heart, and then be brave enough to defy society and do exactly what comes from here. And then everybody does different things, but everyone shares the way of getting instructions from the voice inside. And that creates this wonderful unanimity so that people miraculously don't step on each other's toes.
Our technology is forsaking us.
Oh, no, technology is forsaking us.
So we can't show questions, but I will read one out for you. So okay. Rose Broadbent says, patriarchal society doesn't celebrate maternal and caring qualities. How can we show the necessity of this in our world right now?
Okay, so I hope you all heard that loud and clear. Yes, patriarchal society does not celebrate maternal and caring qualities, but every single person in the world needs them. So if you go about the world following this, it will, by definition, encourage you to have maternal and caring qualities, even if you are male, because everyone is born to love and everyone is born to care for other human beings. So that's going to happen. The other thing that will happen is that some people will sneer at you because you aren't being Game of Thrones. And here is your response to that. This is what you say to them. I hear what you're saying, and I respectfully do not care. Like, you are not going to get the approval of patriarchal society by being anything that will make you happy. It is not a happy social model. That cutthroat climb to the top, there's no there. I've coached billionaires who've won all the games. They're not happy. There's no there. What they want is love. What they want is care. What they want is softness and comfort. So go around the world being that, and you could become a mighty kindness, as Rumi says, a mighty kindness.
So Nadia asks, Martha, how do you lead children and break free?
This is really wonderful. To lead children and break free, what you do is not set them free, but set yourself free. Because they won't do what you teach them about themselves. They'll do what you know about yourself. That's what I found out. You know, I tried to raise my children so they wouldn't be hard on themselves. So I never criticized them for their performance or whatever. But I criticized myself mercilessly. What do you think they did? They didn't treat themselves the way I treated them. They treated themselves the way I treat myself. And the more I learned to be better in the world, to be more uncritically accepting of my true nature, the more it's impacting them, even though they're now in their late 20s and early 30s. So even children who are in their 60s, if their parents in their 80s and 90s get therapy and start valuing themselves more, the children start valuing themselves more. So do things that bring you joy and bring your kids along. I taught myself to play the piano when my youngest daughter was a tiny baby. She's a brilliant pianist because that was what she wanted to do. She saw me doing it. All my children love art and are great artists because I was always drawing and painting. Be yourself, show them, take them along. Okay.
Donna says, our school systems are a perfect example of this. How can we give students greater connection and convince the system of school to stop measuring success with metrics?
Oh boy, school. That is a big soapbox for me. First of all, I loved school. I loved the meritocracy. I loved the constant metrics. I loved it all. So if your kid loves school, go for it. I know lots of brave people who are homeschooling because their kids hate school. I have one pair of friends, a brother and sister, who were in a horrible boarding school, and their parents finally heard that they were in pain and took them out of school and got them a tutor, and they grew up like flying around Africa and Europe. This may be beyond some of our means, but wow, are they well-read and intelligent? Like, there are so many ways to educate a child, and there are options for doing it. If you don't want to homeschool, maybe you can get a tutor. There are charter schools that do different types of learning. I know one child right now of my acquaintance who's in an art school. So there are options out there. Don't think you're stuck with the regular system. I kind of wish I'd taken my kids out. And if you are stuck with the regular system, because 3 precious words, free childcare, then make sure you tell them at home, if they don't like school, okay, this is the system we're working with. It's a crazy system. And we're going to do our best to like just cheat the system, not like copy someone else's paper. This wonderful psychologist named Kathy Colby, some of you have heard of her, sat down with my oldest daughter and said, okay, so you hate school. Here's how we're going to get really high grades by fooling your teachers into thinking that you're doing what they want you to. Well, in fact, you do all your work in 5 minutes and then spend your time drawing. Like, there are ways to make it more pleasurable for the kid, but if a kid's really unhappy, I'd pull them. I would.
Okay, Penny says, I find it hard to balance my own needs with the needs of the people around me. So I swing wildly from one extreme to the other, neither of which is healthy.
Yeah.
How do I do this better?
Yeah, don't take care of yourself until your back is to the wall and then, have a complete meltdown and spend 3 days in bed. That sounds familiar. That was the way I spent my about 20 years of my life. Here's the thing I believe now, cave early. You may have heard me say that. Pay more attention to the inside of your body. As one friend of mine says, keep your heart inside your body. Keep your mind behind your own eyes. And the moment this starts to feel stressed, strained, the moment it starts to feel like a push, take a break. There's something called an Ultradian Rhythm. Every 90 minutes, just like a circadian rhythm where your energy goes up in the day and then down at night. Well, every 90 minutes through the day, you're having these mini rhythms. And so if you keep pushing past 90 minutes when you go into a dip, you get very, very stressed and anxious. It's much better to do something active for 90 minutes and then rest yourself for 90 minutes and then go back and do that periodically. I am trying to do that. It actually really works when I can do it. So put a movie on for your kids, lie down when you're tired for an hour and a half, and then get back to it. That's what I would say.
Okay, Leslie says, how do you know when you're on the right path on the way to break free?
You know, because there's such a powerful metric inside you, and it's just your level of joyful energy. Ro and I, say hi, Ro.
Hi, Ro.
Have been working on a lot of business stuff together, and then we're each writing a book. Ro's writing an amazing novel. I'm writing a self-help book. And it's really, really obvious when we write, which doesn't look as like socially productive as working on business, right? But when we write our books, there's this lightness and joy and energy that is just unmistakable. And if we spend too long doing things like saying, well, maybe we should redo the budget planning on this spreadsheet, it's just like, bleh. Now, some people love spreadsheets, but we should do it minimally and not give up on things like a creative project that may or may not get published, because the joy of it is what steers us toward our destiny. That is my deepest underlying message of my whole life, is go toward the joy, and you'll always get everything done that really needs doing.
Okay, so Donna's coming back to you about the school system thing. She's pushing back a little, and I'm happy to hear it. She's saying, I'd like to change the system of school. I have the chance as a professor to create new models. What do you recommend as a way to design school and teachers who embrace personal development over test scores?
Okay, well, if you want to go there's all kinds of things you could do. My favorite thing would be to run school as a village. And that would mean bringing, there's an education center that I help fund in Africa that's kind of like this. It's a learning center for adults and children in rural Africa. And it's in this big warehouse structure. It's been painted inside, and there's a big tree in the middle of the room that's made out of wires. And it looks like a tree, but it's all wires, and coming out from it are all these computers and pads and everything. And the wonderful people that run that, it's an amazing place. It's raised test scores by like, I think from 40 to 98% or some ridiculous number like that. And adults who can't read or can't do their own bank accounts, this is in rural Africa, the wilderness, right? The villagers come in and they learn together under a tree the way people did in traditional cultures. So I love this model of education, and here's what I've seen. And every child there are teachers circulating, so that if a child is learning something and they have a question, the teacher can help them. And I saw kids in traditional classrooms, in typical colonialized classrooms, sitting 3 to a desk, staring blankly out the window while the teacher tried to teach them things from some Northern Hemisphere textbook, and they just looked dead. Then I went to the Learning Center, and it's called the Good Work Foundation, and they said, get ready, because the doors were about to open, and a busload of children was coming, and they opened the doors, and it was like trampled. I mean, it was like a herd of wildebeest coming in. They were so excited to get in there and start learning. And 3,000 children a week go through that center. So, but they're surrounded by older people who are learning right alongside them. There's I think it was Amartya Sen, the development specialist, who writes about these guys in India who put a computer into a wall of a building so that children could reach it and use it, but not steal it. And they, by themselves, these Indian children who were like beggars, didn't speak English, not only learned English, they taught themselves how to do advanced research on the computers. Like, you can't stop people from learning if you let them have fun. And we know from brain studies that the way the human brain learns is outside, with all 5 senses moving, in motion, doing things that really make sense. Yes. So all those things, outside, moving, practical, real world skills, that are fun. It's fun. Puzzle cracking. It's what we do. So yes, run it like a village. And that's all I can say in like 2 minutes.
So Katie Lowe has jumped on, and she is the wonderful person who suggested this topic for today. Thank you, Katie. And she says, thank you so much for going with my suggestion, and to let everyone else know to look for Breaking Point at libraries, because that's where she found it. It should have sold more. It's great. Martha was on point 30 years before she was on point, smiley face. So yeah, if you can't find Breaking Point online, look in libraries.
Seriously.
No.
Like, I'm not super proud of it. I mean, I think, I know the research is solid, but the prose, well, it was my first book.
Okay, there's a couple of comment/questions here. Malvina says, maybe if older people keep learning, youngsters will follow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And along the same lines, Karen says, what if every child was taught by an elder based on their soul calling, not what the curriculum dictates?
Magnificent. Try it. Like, just like adopt a soul child. Teach them what their soul wants to learn. It would be the best. These are awesome ideas.
Yay. Vanessa asks, can you tell us the name of the study that showed learning where all senses are engaged in motion, etc.? I would love to know it, as I designed an eco-ed tech program for kids that works that way, and I need to back up what I'm doing.
Melina. It's either M-E-L-I-N-A or M-A-L-I-N-A. Google brain learning Melina, and you'll find the guy online who did that research. It's really awesome.
Okay. Elizabeth asks, if I am truly on my true path, will the money follow? How directly do I need to look at money? Can you point to some books, resources you recommend about how to think about money in a holistic way?
This is the big scary that I get to with every client in every book, because my own experience is that when I am in a certain energetic frequency, and I have to start talking woo-woo at this point, money flows to me very easily. And when I'm in a striving, tight, when I'm not following my joy, it doesn't come easily. Now, that doesn't mean that the minute I get joyful and happy, $10 million lands in my bank account. When I first relaxed about money, I was in like $40,000 of credit card debt with no income. My ex-husband, neither one of us was making a living wage at the time. But I just decided to stop worrying about money. Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, was the book that got me started. And I opened her book to a page that said, God has lots of money. And it just smacked me in the head. And I was like, actually, God has all the money, whatever you believe God is. And I just thought, well, I'm not going to worry about it anymore then, because it's who you know. And we all know God. So, and it was 18 months before I actually started earning money as a writer, but it happened. So here's what I would say. Joy plus trust plus time, and the money follows. If you're tight and clenched around money, I did a whole Facebook Live about this a while ago. If you're all clenched around it, it can't reach you. It is a loving energy that wants to do good in the world. But if you're all tight, it can't reach you. And our culture teaches us to be all tight. And everybody's always been that way. And it's like Jesus said, you know, consider the lilies of the field. They're not doing a lick of work. I'm paraphrasing here. And yet Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. So God clothes the grass of the field this way. He will, how will he not clothe you? It works. Try it. That's all I can tell you.
Okay, we're about to wrap up. Francoise says, Martha, you have been my inspiration for some 25 years, so thank you. So excited for this course. She must be about to do
light writing, yay.
Lots of suggestions in the comments for good books. So everyone read through the comments and learn from each other, and feel free to chat in there. We're gonna
just remember, yes, just remember, if every one of us follows our joy, this is my act of faith. If every one of us follows our joy, the educational systems, the children, the old people, our own hearts, they all get cared for in a most miraculous way. So give it a whirl. I love you guys. I'm off to airplanes. See you later.